where some 700 plus megawatts was auctioned subsidy free.
Yeah.
Which, of course, represents a significant decrease in CAPEX and OPEX costs. Or CAPEX and OPEX.
And what's your take on this?
Well, I tend to stay on the side of the opinion side of the CEOs of the major companies involved in the supply chain, from OEMs to steel suppliers and foundation suppliers, and all of them, from Vestas and Siemens to the tower manufacturers and particularly the foundation manufacturers, they all say that margins are being squeezed too much and that it's not sustainable. And I think that's a really strong factor when you have the major executives in the industry saying, we understand why we're in this situation right now. We understand why governments tend to love the idea of building projects with no subsidies, but the supply chain is not going to survive at that price level. Of course, there are other parties who disagree, but I see that as that's the key question about the offshore wind industry in Europe at the moment. And in fact, there is some discussion going on about whether or not it's true that zero subsidies are just too low. On the other hand, the early generation up until 2014 even, those were projects that were built, or maybe even projects younger than that. Yeah, for sure, 2015, 2016. Projects were financed on a 20-year basis. And projects are no longer financed on that. Since 2015 or so, projects have gone from 25 years to now 30 years in some cases, and that helps with the long-term finance. You see your LCOE, your lowest cost of energy, your LCOEs are dropping because there's a longer period, and the debt financiers are becoming more comfortable with longer debt periods, with reasonable coverage ratios and all of that, because the industry has proven its viability, and the returns or the income, the revenue stream is stable, or at least projected to be stable. Obviously, there's barely an offshore project that has 10 years of operational experience already. And those projects were built with technology that's no longer in place for offshore. Whereas the technology has evolved to the point where the first generation of offshore-specific wind turbines are just now beginning their second year of operation. Well, with the exception of some Advent and Senvion projects. But I was speaking of the two major OEMs, which is Siemens and MHI Vestas.